Enjoy our hot gumbo, fries, and your choice of shrimp, catfish, soft-shell crab, or frog legs starting at $9.99. That's right, $9.99 at New Orleans Hamburger and Seafood Company.
Attorney Morris Bart is known across Louisiana for taking on the serious injuries and death cases and obtaining results that speak for themselves. Morris Bart, the firm you know, the name you trust.
This is the most exciting part of the day.
Get ready for a thrill ride.
This is Jeopardy!
Watch Jeopardy tonight at 6 on Fox 8.
Well, it is the last Monday of the month, which means it is Book Club Author Day. This month, Blue Cypress Books chose Forget Prayers, Bring Cake, A Single Woman's Guide to Grieving, for us to read together. We are joined now by local author Marissa Nathan Gerson to talk about the book and its message of navigating loss. Hey, Marissa.
Hi, I'm so glad to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us. Well, I think it is safe to say that you and I are both list people. After reading the book, you have lots of lists. And I just wanted to ask you, why is it so important to have those lists, to kind of pre-prepare and to have different options when you're going through grief or when you're preparing to go through grief?
Amazing. Yeah, generally when we're grieving, our minds are scrambled. I think most New Orleanians know a lot about going through periods where their fear and trauma and past and present and loss come up, and we can't think straight and we can't organize our thoughts so quickly. And so lists are remarkable in times of grief and loss because they organize the part of our brain that's sort of turning off and not exactly ready to tackle the things that we really need in order to stay afloat.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And, would you mind if I read just a little excerpt from your book real quick?
I would be honored.
There was a quote from the book shortly after your dad was diagnosed with a terminal illness that said a friend urged you to let New Orleans in, to let the people love you, and it would surprise you. So I wanted to ask you, how did New Orleans love you?
Well, I had a lot of groups that sort of surrounded me at the time. I was part of the crew of Dystopian Paradise, and they sort of folded me in. And then I also was in this remarkable Bachelor watching group that was a bunch of public defenders in New Orleans. So there was just a lot of little things like that just I hadn't experienced in other lives where we just gathered regularly. But New Orleans, just the culture of being in the street and being outside and second lines and everything about community gathering on any day of the week really was something that really in my time of grief took me out of my loss and into the world.
And you talk about all of those things in your book, which really made it special to kind of have those local ties, but also kind of the broad tie of just grief and how people in different walks of life go through that. You also throughout the book discuss a lot of non-traditional methods of self-care. You talk about how food is a form of self-care, and I think a lot of New Orleanians can certainly relate to that. But what really struck me is when you said that what works for you may not work for others, and that you had this instance where a friend tried to tell you what you needed and it wasn't what you really needed. Mm-hmm. So I think what struck me about that not only is to kind of focus on what you might need, but to focus that on what works for you may not work for your friends. So my question is, what's a better way to support a friend who is grieving, knowing from your book that your ways of coping may not be their best ways?
Yes, awesome. Well, one of the things was just the concept of prayer, even it's comforting for some, it's not for others, and the tangible things are comforting for some people. And I really believe when we're comforting a griever, we should sort of empty ourselves out and offer ourselves sort of in their paradigm. Where are they at? What makes them feel good? Do they want to talk about it? Do they want comforts of prayer in the afterlife, or do they just need a sandwich? And there's times when there's different things that different people need, but our job as sort of comforting people, especially now as the world is continually splintering, that we comfort people on their terms. That's something that I think is hard for a lot of us. We're like, oh, let my reality be your reality. Let what feels good for me feel good for you. But often it really just needs to be us sort of almost mothering our friends and witnessing them where they are without pushing them too hard and giving them the reins.
Yeah, absolutely. I do want to get one more question in. One of our viewers who has experienced grief in the form of being a mother who lost her adult child she wanted me to ask you, how do you cope when your grief wants you to stop and embrace the wave, but life doesn't allow or afford us the time or place to stop?
Ritual. I think ritual is everything, and New Orleans knows a lot about ritual. I'm actually wearing Chris Owens's pin in my hair in the back right now. But these practices of small things to remember the person, little moments in your day. Like I used to keep a photograph of my father in my kitchen and just light a candle each morning. And there's ways when you still have to go to work that you can build in a reminder that this happened, this is real, you're really grieving, in small doses. All over your day and with your friends, and just doing little practices that make the thing in your mind and in your heart real in your reality, even if you have to go and hustle for the rest of the day.
Thank you so much, Marissa. Again, Marissa's book is Forget Prayers, Bring Cake, A Single Woman's Guide to Grieving. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Yes, thank you.
All right, remember to join us next Monday when we'll have a new book to read, and you can follow us on social media for discussions as we read along. Then join us later in the month to talk with the author. As we go to break, here's a look at some places around town offering trivia nights this week.